Hey everyone, welcome back to Chocolate and Spice to Brown Women Talk. I am Nidhi, and today we are diving into something that half the population will go through, but hardly anybody talks about it: perimenopause and menopause.
Exactly. Hi, I'm Neha, and so today we're talking about it out loud with someone who's made it her mission to help women feel seen, supported, and feel strong. We're so excited for today's guest, Miranda Zuhlke, a certified physician assistant and a menopause specialist with the North American Menopause Society. She supports women through hormone therapy, reproductive wellness, and the major health shifts that come with this phase of life.
And I'm so excited because our guest today is not just an expert, but she is also a longtime friend of mine. Miranda and I have been virtual friends for over 10 years now. We met through Instagram, stayed in touch, and she's a mom to two beautiful boys, a wife, and somebody who has created a life full of intention, care, and service for others.
Awesome. So let's get into it. Hormones, healing, and how to reclaim your energy with Miranda. All right. Hey, Miranda. So happy to have you on our podcast. So let's start with the basics. Can you help us understand the difference between perimenopause and menopause? And when do these phases typically start and how long do they last?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think the easiest place to start, and this is kind of how I teach it to the PA students and the medical students at school as well, is menopause. That's like the easiest thing that we kind of define. Like textbook, it's when your period has stopped for one full calendar year. And that usually for women in the United States, average age is 51 to 52. But our bodies don't read the textbook, and women's bodies definitely don't read the textbook. So you hear a lot about perimenopause. Am I in perimenopause? And there's no test, no real diagnostic tool that we can use that can test that, but that is the transitional phase before menopause. And that can be anywhere, start in like your mid to late 30s and go all the way until 52. So that's really where it gets hairy and hard for women to sort out because that time of life, just into everything else, your families, your aging parents, your nieces and nephews, your children, your career, your relationship. So the last thing you really have to focus on is yourself. Just that's what we do as women. So by the time women get to me at all those different times in life, mid 30s, where they're just starting, and in 40s and in 50s, they're often like, I don't even know what's going on, help. And there's no magic test to do for any of them, except for the easy part of if they haven't had a period for a year, you can be pretty certain it's menopause. But it's a hard one to really nail down. That's why this topic is so important.
It's interesting. And so you say, like, for menopause, there's a textbook idea and probably some science, like broader science. But for perimenopause, because it gets overlooked so much, is there anything at all like we could be cautious about as we because like I'm mid 40s, so I'm thinking, is it like 5 years earlier from 50? Like how do I chalk it up?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I tell people to start really, you know, and I listened to your last podcast, which was great, by the way, but women and people don't really start to think about it till we start going through it. And it's kind of like with secondary infertility and uh, I guess I would say I had unexplained infertility and never really did I track my cycle or anything like that. I just spent the first part of my young reproductive years trying not to get pregnant. And then when I wanted to get pregnant, I was like, what's all this? And, I am in the medical space and I was like, wow, there's so much I don't know. And I really think that women can really start to pay attention what's going on with their bodies the earlier the better. So in their late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, it may just be something as subtle as your period gets shorter or longer, or it's heavier or lighter. And then another really big thing is mood, because when we think about menopause, we think hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, but we don't really think about all the other ways that estrogen and progesterone really affect us. So you also might notice just little mood changes, like before, if you still get your period, before your period you start to have a lot more like what we would think of as like PMS issues, but really that's because you're losing progesterone pretty significantly leading up until your period, and then all throughout your period you're getting a rise and a low of all the other hormones as well, which is why it's so tricky. So mood change, sleep disturbances, like as you progress through the transition and closer to menopause, you'll get more sleep disturbances. You may get joint pain, fatigue. Um, Brain fog is a big one too. And how do you decipher that out with everything else going on in life? So that's also why it's really important to find a provider that's really educated in perimenopause and menopause, because otherwise we get dismissed always in medicine and healthcare. And that's pretty much why I went into this. I saw it firsthand over and over and over and over. And I'm like, no one's listening to us. Like, people just need to listen. So,
Yeah. And in fact, like everything you said, I'm like textbook case for me because
Me
yeah,
too. I was going to say the same thing. I have a list of things, and whatever Miranda says, like tick, tick, tick. Pretty
and at night I have to wake up and drink water. Like it's crazy. I start getting joint pains if I'm not taking calcium. It's ridiculous. But do you think there are
yeah.
any lifestyle factors that may help mitigate some of the symptoms?
hmm The biggest thing I can say is, and I've seen it firsthand in my practice, but also personally, and everyone always rolls their eyes, but I just love it. So the first is physical activity. The more you can do, the better. The strength training is really key, and I think we've learned that throughout the years, just with all sorts of cardiovascular health. And this is really no difference. Being physically active just makes the transition in perimenopause and menopause much better. We have estrogen receptors throughout our whole body, and when we lose that estrogen, we get that joint pain and bone health really suffers. So when you see the big craze about women walking with the weighted vests, I see them in my suburb and I'm like honking at them and waving, and I'm just so happy that women are out there doing that. But that really will help prevent osteopenia, osteoporosis, all these things that really, as we age, we can't undo. We can prevent and we can, do some other things, but really, if you get if you get through life and have a really low BMI and you don't have much muscle mass and you're more at risk for falling, then you fall and break your hip and it just leads to all sorts of bad things. So I tell women my goal is to set you up for success for the remainder of your time,
Yeah.
which historically has been looked at as, 40 over the hill, menopause, but really to me, I look at menopause as like this rite of passage. By the time you're mid 40s and 50s, like you have arrived, you have survived all the BS to get there. You should be so bad ass and confident in who you are. And if you aren't, I will help you get there, because this is all the time you have left and you should make it so great. But this menopause then slaps you upside the head like, well, WTF, you thought you were going to get there, but I'm going to stop you. But if you know how to navigate it, it makes it much better. So physical activity is one, weighted vest, strength training. Another thing really is alcohol. And uh, I could talk for 3 hours just on this. And I love alcohol, and I think I'm way more fun with a little drink. But really, when you dive in and look at it, our culture is just, and I live in Wisconsin, so we are like the drunkest state. Beer and cheese is what we do and what we do well. But it really, alcohol is probably the worst drug out there. And I say this coming from, for the first 10 years of my practice, I worked in the ER, and I have a family history of alcoholism, and it just is a really personal thing, but also the risk factors for alcohol um, really weigh heavy with cancers and everything else. But we're so afraid of things like hormones for menopause, but we still do the alcohol, and everything is fine in moderation, but really alcohol is something that becomes less tolerant with menopause. It makes your symptoms worse, your hot flashes, your night sweats, you can't sleep, the hangovers the next day, and then also the anxiety of when you drink tends to get worse with perimenopause and menopause. So as much as I love it, and again, everything in moderation, I always talk about that when I talk about menopause because it really does change things, and more is not better. So alcohol is a big one. Alcohol and physical activity, and then having a healthy BMI is really lifestyle things that we can do that can help ease this transition and go through it.
Yeah, this is so helpful. And especially the point that you made about by the time women hit 40, that's when we kind of finally let go of all our inhibitions. And it's like people pleasing, whatnot. And we're finally ourselves. And then this hits. And they're like
Yes.
constrained again in some way. So I'm so glad you shared with us potential. Like, I feel like lifestyle factors like eating well, exercising,
Mhm.
moderation with alcohol, these are, and then just being happy. I feel like these are amazing cues.
Yeah.
And I will certainly have a drink with you when I see you, Miranda. But you will be very happy to know that in last couple of years, I have drastically reduced my alcohol consumption, and I'm maybe one drink in a couple of months, and I do feel better. My
Yes.
metabolism has gone down, and I sleep much better, and I can certainly connect the dots. What was causing so much discomfort in my life? So certainly.
Yes. Yes, me too. I mean, I grew up like it's just kind of, it's everywhere. It's our culture, it's what we do. I mean, when you host, you like I mean, I will be like, what do we need to get? What's the drink of the summer? What's this? And really too, I mean, and I have my children later in life, so how old am I? I'm 41. Um and my husband will be 46 actually tomorrow. Um but we've really noticed too, it's harder. Everything's harder, but our sleep, I've never gotten this much sleep and good sleep in my whole life now that I'm not working in the ER as much and doing all those things. But then I have these two little kids, but I can't imagine if I still like had as much alcohol as I normally do, I would not be able to function. And it really does. There's also a power in it, kind of. I go against the grain in everything I do, so I'm kind of like when I have menopause events, we do a mocktail and a cocktail, but it is an important thing to really kind of hone in on, and you do feel better, which is awesome.
Shifting a little bit on the personal journey, so you have built such a powerful platform supporting women through perimenopause and menopause. So, what inspired you to get into women's health?
Yeah, so when I look back, it's funny because everything kind of set me up to be here. And when I first went into medicine, I was a little bit older when I got my PA. I did my undergrad and then a master's, and then I went to PA school instead of medical school, which was a really I always thought I wanted to be the physician. And then when I got into medical school, I was already 29, and I knew that I wanted a family, and I knew that I wanted to do medicine, and I said I should be a PA.
And for our
You know,
audience, Miranda, can you explain what PA is?
yes, yes. So a PA is a physician assistant or a physician associate. We're going through a name change, but everyone pretty much knows us as a physician assistant. So we are master level educated, and then doctorate level of medical science. And so you do your bachelor's degree, and then you do a master's program, and then a doctorate, or potentially can do a doctorate. And you can practice under an attending physician. That's usually, it's state regulated. In Wisconsin, we need to practice with a collaborating physician. So that's what we do. But you can really be as autonomous as you would like. We can go into any field, we can prescribe, we can um, read imaging, we can treat, we can be primary care. So for me, I went into emergency medicine. That's what I always thought was my goal, um, like old school Dr. Quinn medicine woman, ER on NBC on Thursday nights. That's what I wanted to do. And then I did that and I was like, is this it? Like, is this it? A lot of times I felt like I was like band-aiding really big things. And, once in a while you would, depending on where you practice, I did a lot of community medicine, which was very, very satisfying. But I found myself just getting more frustrated with the system and the process. And am I really doing good medicine? A lot of times people would come to the ER and if they weren't dying or trying to die, it really wasn't great care. We were really good in emergency medicine at the uh, things that are trying to kill you, but everything else were just mediocre. And for me, that wasn't enough. But it was hard for me to leave the ER. I loved it. It was definitely my first passion and love for medicine, but there was something missing. So I always had a sexual health, women's health interest, but there's no programs in the United States. And there was one in the Netherlands, but I was also amidst my own IVF fertility journey. So I couldn't exactly go somewhere and study for a couple of years. And I did a program at the University of Michigan where they trained physicians, PAs, physician assistants, and nurse practitioners to integrate basically sexual health as a counselor into your practice. So I did that program back in 2021. And then I had kind of shifted a little bit out of the ER into the role I am in now in the clinic. I am fortunate enough to work at a really great biotech company that has their own wellness center, and I'm one of the providers there. And I just kind of went to my boss and said, I want to bring this here, sexual health and menopause. And do you think people will come? And he was like, yes. And that's kind of how it got started. And then I could serve those patients. So we see our employees, their partners, and their families. But I wanted more for the community. So then I started seeing patients in a private practice. Um, and I thought that's how I could reach more women. But really, and this is why this is so important. So I'm so happy you're doing this topic. This is all information that should be free and available, and primary care should know how to do it. Women make up half the population. We matter. We are great at what we do. And this information should be available, but it's just not. And that's why I too teach at the PA school, because also physicians do not get any menopause training in their residencies. OB-GYNs don't know how to do menopause because they are very, very good at getting you pregnant, caring for you during pregnancy, and no one really owns this, and it needs to be its own niche, and it's becoming that, but it also should be accessible and free. I don't want women to have to come to me and consult me and pay me these things and to get these options. It should be known, but again, the system is broken. Primary care doesn't have time. So I'm just now starting to embark in how do I educate companies to bring this into a lunch and learn and to get this information out because it should be accessible. So I'm trying to do that. It's a passion project. So I'm sorry that was so long-winded.
That was good, beautiful. And you are doing God's work. I mean, as you mentioned,
Oh,
there is a gap in our society. Like nobody talks about it. Like everybody's concerned with like pregnancy, postpartum, but nobody really talks about when you get older and all of these things starts affecting you. So yeah, so proud of you for taking this up and doing
oh,
something about it.
Absolutely.
thank you.
And it's also very surprising to me that I didn't know this, like that the medical system is not kind of already built this topic, because I just assumed it is. Like I just assumed if I were to go to my doctor, they'd know and they'd be able to diagnose and help me. I'm I'm truly surprised. It's like but very helpful to learn. I was also wondering, like, we talked about some of the physical symptoms, and there's also an emotional toll. I'm guessing, like the stakes, and if you've seen women talk to you about it, how do you help them navigate that?
Yeah, and a lot of times the the biggest complaint I hear is, I got in the shower and I couldn't remember if I washed my hair, so I washed it again. And then I couldn't remember what I was going to do for this. I walked in the room, and it's more than just this little brain fog. It's more than just like the motherhood load and the parenting load. Um, and then it's also mood. And like we haven't even touched on like how this affects our partners and sexual and things like that. But we also live in this society that doesn't set us up for success in those areas. We're expected to have these amazing, um, desirable sex lives in all of this, and our libido's tanking. We're anxious AF. We can't sleep, and then we get irritable, and then you're more depressed than normal, and all of that can be due to the hormonal imbalance as we go through this. So really it's teasing out what is the biggest thing. And each woman I see has a different goal and a different I always ask, what are your goals of seeing me? What do you want to work on? What do you want to um see improve? And then we kind of go from there and walk through, maybe some hormonal options or non-hormonal options. But it also brings up women as they age constantly get dismissed and easily put on a new SSRI or antidepressant or anti-anxiety medicine during this stage. And really, they probably just needed a little bit of estrogen and or progesterone or a little bit of testosterone. Um, and that's what really becomes a problem because we're scared out of hormones from the Women's Health Initiative back in 2000 era from hormones, but also physicians. There's still a lot of physicians and providers, all encompassing, PAs, NPs, that are afraid of hormones because of that. So it is a problem with educating the system and the medical education.
That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like, hormone therapy is such an unknown, and therefore it feels intimidating. And you also touched a bit about, the sexual health and the relationship side of perimenopause and menopause. And so, do you think, like, how can women feel supported with one, like, what? Sorry, I'm going to rephrase my question. Like, one, what are the changes that may happen with perimenopause and menopause as regarding to women's libido and, sexual desires? And second, how can they be supported or helped?
Yeah, education is power, knowledge is power, your support system, your village for raising your family is also your village for going through perimenopause and menopause, and partners too. I do all of these like speaking engagements for the community, and I almost every time women say, "Can you do one for my partner?" And I'm like, "Yes, let's do it." And no matter who you're partnered with or if you're even solo, these changes matter, low libido, lack of connection, vaginal dryness, painful sex, all of those things. Like nobody's going to want to do anything if that's going on. But how often do we even get asked about that? Like I went to my provider, my physician provider, um, for my physical, and a lot of things stood out. Number one, she didn't ask about sexual activity. Maybe she assumes I'm infertile and I don't have sex. I don't know. Uh, she didn't do a breast exam because I had gotten a mammogram, and she was like, "Well, if you find any lumps, let me know." I'm like, "What?" And never once is sexual activity even asked. And I don't know if people are uncomfortable about talking about it, and there certainly is a stigma around it. But again, it shouldn't be. It's one of those things in life that, number one, it's free. Number two, we need to put more connection and emphasis on creating relationships as we go through all of these stages of life. Like your last podcast, I loved because, the newborn stage, you kind of forget a little bit and then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't ever, like, that was terrible. But we don't even talk about that in relationships. And then you go through perimenopause and menopause. We definitely don't talk about sex then. Women come to me and they're like, I haven't had sex in 15 years. But I also have a young population that comes to me and says the same thing. And it, sexual activity altogether is a whole other topic I could talk for days on, but we don't nurture that relationship like we really should. But yet we're expected to have these amazing relationships. And, um, you know, Hollywood portrays it, everyone portrays it, and it's all just BS. Like, can we talk about these things? But also, if your partner is a male, they can go get something for libido like this, but women can't. There's only two FDA approved products for women. But it's sorry, that was kind of a tangent, but
This is very
all
helpful.
important.
Yeah, because this is a topic that almost feels like you're right. Like it may feel taboo, and people don't even talk about it. And so, one of the goals of our podcast is no topic is taboo. If it helps anybody, we're going to talk about it. So I'm really very grateful that you touched upon it, and you actually dove really deep into what the problems could be, and the most important thing being your partner should have an awareness of this problem, and you should be able to freely talk to them about it, which is super helpful. Sorry, I might have forgotten to ask you about hormone therapy. You did touch upon it, but is there anything else you wanted to add about when women should take it, or who should actually take it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So women, average age in the US that goes through menopause is 51, 52. But any woman that has gone through menopause earlier than 40, that is considered premature ovarian failure or premature menopause. And early menopause is when a woman goes through that between 40 and 45. And in both of those cases, those women should be on hormone replacement therapy at least until the average age of menopause, which is 51, 52. And when I started doing this, I would be a little hesitant to share that with women because I didn't want their providers to be, I didn't want to badmouth their providers, but it really, again, comes down to the lack of education in menopause training. And a lot of times, too, though, women get dismissed when they go to the doctor and by even other women providers, and they say, you're too young to be experiencing this. This can't be it. You can't have hot flashes. I just saw someone in clinic who's 38 and she had not had a period for an entire year, which is the definition of menopause. And her primary care had said, that's not possible. And then they drew her FSH, which is an indicator of menopause. And that was very elevated, and it basically supported the diagnosis of menopause, premature menopause. But no one had told her anything about being on hormone replacement or you should be on it. And when she came to me, she was in tears, and I said, well, you actually need a higher dose than what they ended up starting her on. And her provider, I think, was not knowledgeable about it, but she basically was afraid to increase her dose. And we increased her dose, and it made a world of difference. And it's not anything to be afraid of. Hormone replacement therapy is relatively safe for the majority of women. There's certainly contraindications where you can't take it, but for the majority of women, it is safe and a very, very reasonable option for this stage of life.
That's awesome. I think it's super helpful for everybody to learn that one, it's safe, and second, when are the scenarios you should definitely go ask for it, especially if your doctor's not offering. Yeah, super helpful.
And a quick question on hormone therapy, like when women come to your clinic. So, what are the factors that help you evaluate if this patient is a good fit for hormone therapy? Like, is any test? that you do to come to that conclusion?
Yeah, so easiest is when they have not had that period for a year and they usually need a little bit higher dose of estrogen than I would start someone maybe in perimenopause. But really, it just comes down to listening and getting that clinical history. Like, what are they feeling? What are they, because also by the time we get to midlife, we're complicated creatures and all of our baggage comes with us. So I usually spend a good amount of time teasing everything out. And almost all the time libido is brought up, and I always say, okay, we got to remember libido is multifactorial though too. Like we have a lot to work on. Everyone wants me to like cure them with like this great sex life and no more symptoms and all the things, but it is like a work in progress. And two big things I kind of want to touch on without being overwhelming with the medical information. And this is another reason why I got into this. When we are going through our peak reproductive years and we're put on birth control for contraception, the only question that's really asked is, do you have migraines with aura and do you smoke? And those are kind of our risk factors for we don't want to put someone on birth control because of the risk of basically clotting in the simplest terms. And I say, okay, I see that. But we put them on an extremely high dose of hormones. And what those hormones are doing for birth control is taking a magic wand and shutting off the ovaries, suppressing them down because we do not want you to get pregnant. When you look at that level of hormone, that level compared to hormone replacement therapy, when we don't have any estrogen or progesterone or testosterone left, or very little, all we want to do is take like the salt and pepper and add it back in. We're not trying to suppress those ovaries anymore most of the time because they're still not popping out an egg and risking ovulation and getting pregnant. Sometimes in perimenopause there is, but you still need that contraceptive piece. But the medicine part is such a lower dose of hormones that it shouldn't be made scary. And that's my biggest beef too, is in reproductive years, we hand out birth control like it's candy, and we don't ever scare women into this might cause breast cancer, this might cause a stroke, this might cause a clot. But then they get midlife when we finally arrived into who we are and are being our badass selves, and they're like, you can't have this. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? That doesn't make sense. And it is true, the you don't want to go 25 years without estrogen and then add it back. There is something called the healthy cell hypothesis or the timing hypothesis, where you really want to start hormone replacement or menopause replacement therapy within 10 years of menopause, because you don't want to go all that time without estrogen and then add it back in. That does make it a little more risky, but really it is a safe and viable option. We just have scared people with the findings that were kind of misrepresented from the Women's Health Initiative about cancer and what hormones actually do. And it scared a lot of people into that. But when you look at it big picture, the amount of hormones in your birth control is much higher than the dosing of hormones you would get for hormone replacement therapy as perimenopause and menopause, which it just doesn't make sense why the fear is still around that and scary. And same with infertility. When I went through that, I was putting on 4 patches of estrogen a day, taking oral estrogen, injecting progesterone and I did it for like 10 years. Like nobody ever said, you need a mammogram to make sure that you aren't getting breast cancer. They never said, they just wanted to make sure I didn't smoke. And there is a lot of risk factors that, as we age, which makes things a little more complicated. It's not as simplistic as I'm making it out to be, but overall, it really is ridiculous how we scare and fearmonger in medicine around this.
Wow, mind blowing. It's such good information. Yeah, I was going to talk about advocating for health, but I think you spoke so beautifully about how we can do it. Like the mindset that currently we have. Like you brought so much beauty to perimenopause and menopause. Like this is the beginning, right? I mean, obviously there are bad things about it or not so comfortable things about it, but what other like mindset shifts you wish more women embrace during this phase of life?
Oh, oh, my favorite question. I mean, my whole goal is that, I mean, I, I I am like the ultimate hype girl for perimenopause and menopause. I just think women, like, look at what we do. We run the world like needy. You know my fertility journey and like how two strangers carried my children. And it is constantly life, like women showing up for women. Like I have a great partner, a great husband, but he doesn't do what we do. And I just think women have this bond and we create life and we sustain it and we do all these things. And I just want every woman to know, like, by the time you get here, like you truly have arrived. You have, this should be a stage like on fire, like literally not with hot flashes and night sweats. Like we'll take care of that. But because you're so just in love with who you are and happy with who you are, and everyone is so unique and has such a journey, and that's what I love, and that's what makes the medicine of it so hard. Like a lot of times I'm like, oh, I tried this, why doesn't this work? But maybe she needs a little more of this and a little more of this and not this. And but that's what makes it so beautiful, is that we're all so uniquely different and offer so many things, but we are just out there killing it. And I think at this stage we're unstoppable. And I think once you figure that out and you believe it and you truly live it, I think there is nothing that women can't do. And I will like die on that hill. I like cry with women because I'm like, look at you. This is it. Look what you're doing. And they're like, oh, I'm not doing it. I'm like, you are doing all the things and you're amazing at it. So I just want to be that ultimate hype girl for all of the women.
You've already made my sister cry. She cried. I'm pretty sure she's tearing up right now.
I find it so beautiful. I mean, your advocacy, especially the way you put it, like we've only just arrived, and then something, society, culture, like a misunderstanding is again clamping us down. Like why, right? So love your advocacy.
Oh, yeah. I make my husband come to these talks, and I'm like, first of all, you need to understand what we're going through, and you need to be ready, and you need to tell all your friends because it is not just our problem, too. Like the support and, just the things that come along too as we get there, like, sexism, ageism, they don't have that. Like, all the stigma around everything, dyeing our hair, aging, it just, but we're so badass. Like,
Yeah, doing it.
mm-hmm. Yep.
So, one last question for you. Some of our audience are in their 20s and early 30s. And what would advice would you give those women that they could start doing right now to prepare for this transition in life?
Yes, I would say track your symptoms. When I went through infertility, which kind of kicked this all off, I was young. I was 30. I had my first miscarriage. They said, "Oh, you're just stressed. It happens." And I knew that medically, the statistics, and I really didn't even know all the things I should be doing. And then I really started to lean into tracking, like tracking my cycle, tracking this. And that's really true with perimenopause and menopause is figure out what's normal for you because there is no normal, no normal. People come in everything. Everyone wants to know the normal or, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Like everyone is so different. I have a twin and we are so night and day different. Our stages of life, our um, going through menopause, all of the things are different. So I would say track your symptoms, your sleep is so big. Sleep, mood, libido, uh, shift, anything that doesn't feel right. It is difficult because I think there's a big movement, as there should be, for this right now. But I also want people to be very aware and cautious and hesitant with anybody that says balancing hormones. That's BS. Like, run, they're going to take your money. There's no balancing of hormones because the menstrual cycle every 28 to 32 days is constantly like this. In perimenopause, you're like this with all your hormones: estrogen, progesterone, LH, FSH, testosterone. And there is a way to quote balance them, but not at the cost of supplements and all the other things. So just be very, very cautious when you kind of get there and lean into it. But I also understand women are so desperate when they get to this phase too. They'll try anything. So I think, again, knowledge is power. Track everything that you can. You can find certified menopause providers at the North American Menopause Society. It's actually just now called the Menopause Society, but it's NAMS. And I can maybe get that link, but you can find a menopause certified provider within your community. And again, my hope is that just this education is and knowledge is free because it should be, and we shouldn't have to be seeking out and paying these bougie private practices hundreds of dollars to tell us what should be in the medical school curriculum. But we're getting there little by little. I'm tackling the University of Wisconsin on its own. But I think we'll get there. But again, I think empowering women, we know that historically and statistically across all cultures, that creates more powerful communities and environments. So we'll just keep whittling away at that.
It's beautiful. I mean, I love the fact that, you mentioned every woman is unique. And so they track their symptoms, like don't go by textbook, like on an average, this is how it should be. So that's how you're supposed to behave. No, like every woman has a different length of cycle and different approach to how they solve their like hormonal issues. And so tracking that is probably the best approach. I'm a true believer in, making sure you understand your own body rather than just going with the herd. Like, so appreciate. Yeah.
All right. So, final questions for you, Miranda. So, I would love for you to share how our audience can be useful to you. So, I know you started your own business, you started your own practice. So, how can they book a visit with you? How can they support you in your journey and support us, like women like me? How can we come to you?
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you for giving me a platform to even speak. I was like, oh, they don't want me. Like, what? Is this a dream? And I was like, uh, yeah, so I'm just getting ready to launch my business Midlife Rising. And hopefully then, um, if and again, it shouldn't be the women's responsibility. So that's why I'm taking it to the corporations. If my goal is that eventually I can come in and speak at lunch and learns or, you know, just educate, and that would be the best. But I don't want women paying for that. I want the businesses in your HR departments that have the funding and the money. They should be doing that because women in the workplace are so powerful. Like, we know this, we know what we can do. But then that gets the education out to everybody in the company. And that's what I hope maybe to get support in, because really, I just want every woman to be on fire at this stage. And that's how I think I can reach as many people. And if right now, if you're in Wisconsin or Iowa, I do take private practice patients. But again, I hope to move away from that just because I care too much. I don't want this to be women's responsibilities. I want it to be the corporations and the businesses and the clinics, and I want it to be their job to do the work. But I'll keep pushing. Nobody's going to tell me no. So
And so just to confirm again, so this like Women's Rising, I think, I don't know if I got the name right. Women's Rising is something that you've started that you're helping corporations lean into other women's health while learning from your Women's Rising. I guess.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. So midlife rising, very, very close, midlife rising. But then I think. so I don't really know what I call it, maybe corporate wellness. And then hopefully my goal is that benefits teams will then reach out to me and say, hey, come talk at this lunch and learn. I did it for my company and 70 women showed up and I was hoping like two would come and it's easy. My job's easy. I just listen to what they want and they keep telling me to do this more and I'm like, okay, well, let's do it then. So
It's amazing. Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. This was so amazing, Miranda. Cannot even explain how appreciative we are for you taking the time. I'm sure you have a super busy schedule and for sharing all the knowledge and empowering us. And for our audience, you can always find us at chocolateandspicetalk.com. We've got blog posts, episode notes, behind the scenes stories, and more. And we'll add the links that Miranda talked about today as well in the blog post. And if you've got thoughts, experiences, or questions you want to share, drop us an email at hello@chocolateandspicetalk.com or send us a message on Instagram at chocolateandspicetalk. We truly love hearing from you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
bye.